Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. Anytime that I see that somebody brands themselves as intuitive, much like my guest today, Jenn Johnson, who brands herself as the intuitive nurse, that automatically gets my attention because I personally find myself to be pretty intuitive, and I don't know if that is going to be tested somehow by my guest today. I can't even predict how that would be, but I always take the approach that my guest is the expert and I am here for the ride. But I think this is going to be a really fun ride because Jenn Johnson is not only a speaker and an author and very knowledgeable of the nursing industry, working in emergency rooms. She's also trying to help nurses through her business. She's the CEO of RX for Growth, and there is also something on her site. I love reading things off of everybody's site because sometimes I feel like everybody meaning my guests, really sum things up so beautifully on their websites or just on LinkedIn. And let's see, I'm going to read this off. At RX for Growth, Jenn's passion lies in empowering nurses to thrive both personally and professionally. She has a unique blend of professional development programs, resilience training. I also talk about resilience a lot in my life. And reflective journals are designed to combat burnout, foster growth, and ensure a fulfilling career in nursing. I feel like that sums it up beautifully. Jenn Johnson, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing so well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well now that we got our timelines and everything all sorted out, and we are finally here. Jen is also from Canada as well, which I have. See, this is like one of the coolest things about doing a show like this. It's like one day I'll talk to somebody from Australia, the next from some part of the US I've never even been to, and then we have Jen from Ontario, Canada. And the first thing I think of with Ontario is Shania Twain.
Absolutely not. She grew up maybe I want to say 4 to 5 hours from where I am. So we
Wow.
all we all know it and love it.
And that tells you just how big Canada is because Ontario to me, I'm like, oh, that should, when you started that sentence, I'm like, oh, she's probably only like a half hour away. Wow.
No, Ontario from here to where I went to school was a 24-hour drive,
Oh my gosh,
and it
that's
was still in
insane.
Ontario.
Wow.
So
Man,
it's
oh
big.
man. Yeah, no, I mean Alaska, I had somebody on my show from Alaska and just talking about Alaska alone is like humongous, let alone
Huge.
Canada. And then you divide it into the provinces and you think it's like, oh, that's smaller. No, that's also like very big.
We try.
Oh, well, you're doing a very good job. So, speaking of doing a very good job, let's kind of dive in to your path. And first of all, I mean, your entire background is just front to back, all about nursing. Was nursing or being involved in the medical field in some way, was that always something that you wanted to do, or was there ever anything else that you wanted to do?
I thought I was going to be an accountant. To be honest, in high school, I took accounting classes. I thought that was the way I was going to go. Turns out I definitely do not have the attention to detail or the patience for numbers whatsoever. I ended up going to school for biology, thinking again that that was something that I was interested in. And the Lakehead University is a big forestry school, so they do it's very biology heavy, but it's plant biology, it's not people biology. So went through a year and went kind of like, oh, this is not what I want to do in the slightest. Why don't let me just figure out what else I want to do. And a buddy that was in residence with me, she was in nursing, so we would look through her textbooks and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is more of what I want to do. So I fell into it face first. It was luck of the draw.
Well, let me ask you this. I, in no way, shape, or form, have the mathematical ability to do anything outside of a creative field. Did you at least have a fighting chance? Did you have any mathematical ability at all?
Yeah, I'm actually halfway decent at math, and thankfully, nursing is very the hardest it gets is we do drug calculations, so it ends up turning into a little bit of an algebra equation, where it's the dose of what you want over what you have, and then multiplied by vehicle. So that's about as dangerous as it gets with drug calculations for the most part, and that's okay. That's enough. That's more than enough.
I think I had a guest on my show just the other day that they were somehow talking about trigonometry, and I'm like, I never even touched
No.
trigonometry. Like, I had to take like pre-algebra in like my first semester of college before even moving on to regular algebra, and that was hard enough as it was. Like, I just am not a math person whatsoever.
No.
I can tell you who's winning or losing a sporting event, and I can do just enough to get by in life, but I'm definitely in the right field and doing the right thing because math is not my forte. So,
No.
uh,
I hear you.
just reassuring to know that there are more people who can do math better than me. That's a good thing. So you got into nursing, you went to nursing school, and so one reason that doing a show with this kind of theme is good for me is that I'm curious about everything, like every profession. Before I finally got my degree and settled on the path I'm on, I must have tried like 50 billion things and had 50 billion ideas. And I know that doing something like nursing was actually something that I never ruled out. So I definitely have a curiosity as to like what it's like to go through a nursing program. And did you pretty much know once you got into it that, okay, I definitely made the right call with my life?
Oh, for sure. My marks went from low 50s, 60s to all of a sudden 80s and 90s. I'm like, oh, clearly I'm way more interested in this than the plant biology and all that kind of stuff. So knowing that it was interesting and it was kept my attention, and there was so many, every day you figured out that there was another way to nurse. Like, you didn't have to be at the bedside, you didn't have to be in hospital, you didn't have to work shift work if you didn't want to. It was just so refreshing to go like, oh, so it's not just a one track. Like, you're not just being spat right into the hospital system. You do whatever you wanted, research to innovation to product design to create, like writing, all this, like so many various ways to nurse. And it's just, I always am blown away when I run into new nurses and they're doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things that I never even thought a nurse would be doing. So it's so cool. And to break out and to do something different is just the best.
And you chose emergency nursing, which, for copyright reasons, I can't necessarily name the company that that type of a field or that type of job reminds me of. But I I used to work at a very well-known satellite radio company where if we got an alarm, and especially if we had like a real issue and we lost like, and this would really happen, 75 channels, or even sometimes if it was one channel, I mean, it's a lot of pressure. And I can't imagine the amount, I mean, we're talking about, media and keeping a channel alive versus like a person. There's a big difference, but it's still a lot of pressure. So I'd be really curious to just talk about a bit like, why did you decide to do that? Did you have time to really feel that out and be like, yeah, I really get this is like really fulfilling or gratifying, or I get a rush out of doing this? Like, what was your thinking on choosing that particular path?
Yeah. So another instance where I fell into the specialty of nursing. So my first job was both, it was such a small hospital that there was only one nurse for emerge and one nurse and one registered nurse and two practical nurses or LVNs on the floor. So really you just went back and forth between working the floor, and then the next day you're working emerge, and the next day you're working the floor, and the next day you're working emerge. So I never had thought about emergency nursing, but man, oh man, does it fit my personality so well. We joke that everybody who works long term in the emerge is either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD, because it takes a lot to be going from one thing to the next, and then all of a sudden somebody's crashing and you have to drop everything and go to that person and be able to handle that person for a period of time, come out of it, and then go, oh, what was I doing? Oh yeah, da, 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 and go back to what you were doing prior to the ceiling falling in, kind of thing. So it's not always go. It's a lot of what comes into emerge really could have gone to a family doctor or to a walk-in clinic or an urgent care center. But here in Ontario and in Canada, right now, if you've signed up with a family physician and you can't get in to see your family physician for whatever reason, if you were to go to a walk-in clinic, you could get dinged and your family doc could kind of, fire you. So the only way around that is to come to the ER. So
Wow.
a lot of people coming to emerge for not life or death reasons, or people think it's a life and death issue, and I know that it's not, but you kind of still have to be very empathetic and work with people a little bit to be like, okay, do you see how I'm not freaking out? Do you see me being cool as a cucumber? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, great. So congratulations, you are well enough to wait. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you have the luxury of time right now. Like, you are well enough that I don't need to rush you back immediately to see a doctor immediately. Like, you're not that sick. If something were to change, absolutely, potentially we could bring you back. But right now, in this instance at triage, I've done your vitals, I've gotten the story, I've got your history, and I'm looking at you right now, and I think that you can wait. And that's 17 years of ER experience. Kind of, we'll do some blood work ahead of time, we'll give you some Advil and Tylenol. If it's an arm or leg x-ray, I can probably do those ahead of time, but you're going to wait, and it's going to be okay. But you are going to wait. And a lot of people have trouble with that. But it's just the way, at least the Canadian healthcare system is anyways.
I have a pretty good friend on TikTok that I referenced before we hit record, and I don't want to speak for them, but I feel like some of the things you just described, they speak to a lot. And I know just from my own experiences, I've had my own health things, and even my wife, who has also had her share of having to go to the ER and things like that. There's a certain process to it, and it you can't automatically like just walk in and say, I mean, I guess you can speak to it better than me because I'm not the expert, but just from my personal experience, it's like, well, you can't just walk in and say, I have an emergency, I gotta be seen now. You know, there's still like a little bit of a process. It has to be pretty extreme, I'm guessing, to be like, hey, okay, we gotta bypass that process. They need to be seen, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're waving your hand walking in saying I have an emergency, chances are actually pretty good that you're not. You're breathing, right? You're managing your own airway, you're breathing, you're talking, so there's no blockage in your airway. You're mentally with it enough to make the argument that you're dying or that you're unwell. So that's most of my assessment, like just by looking at you. And if your color's good, you're not sweating, you're not coming in and out of consciousness, like that would make me bring you back. um, but if you're standing there of your own 2 feet, waving a hand saying, hey, I've got an emergency, I need to be seen, absolutely, I'm going to see you, I'm still going to triage you, but you're going to wait. And I'm sorry, but you're going to wait.
So you've had all these experiences and you reference it a lot on like, Podmatch, all the stuff that I've read, just some of the mental health side of it just as a nurse. But you also talk about like gut feeling, intuition, resilience. And I know personally through my own journey and path that I've learned things along the way that have led me to where I'm at today, which is doing this show and doing some of these things like going live on TikTok. And believe me, there was a time where it's like there's no chance, no way, no how that I would have ever considered doing a lot of this stuff. I grew into it. And I'm curious to know that if there came a point after having all these experiences, was it like a gradual process of, maybe I should like start a business? I really want to like help people who are feeling the same way, going through the same thing? Or did you just wake up and say, that's a great idea?
I did. So during COVID, when we went from seeing 50 to 60 people in the ER in a day down to like 10 to 12. You've all of a sudden got a lot of time on your hands to think about things. And everybody who was coming to the Emerge was so much sicker than we typically would see people. Usually when people are coming in with seeing 50 to 60 people a day, you're maybe admitting 5 to 6 of those people, where the 10 to 12 people, like, you were admitting everybody because everybody was so sick and so unwell because they put things off too long, because they were scared to come to the Emerge. So it got to the point where I'm like, well, maybe if somebody could go to somebody's house, because everybody was doing virtual, doctor's visits at that point. Maybe if somebody could just go to these people's homes, give them a full on head to toe, do a set of vitals, actually see these people in person, maybe we could avoid, again, some of these ER visits. So a nurse in the family was originally my business, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I can go from house to house to house and see these people and help connect doctors and specialists and get everybody talking at the same time. And it was a great idea. All of my nurse buddies were on board. They're like, you let us know when you need more people. I'm like, I absolutely will. Didn't get one. I got one phone call about a pharmacist not wearing gloves when they gave a shot, and that was probably the only person who called about my business. It wasn't even really about my business. So I was like, oh, well, this is kind of unfortunate. Like, I love that nobody in Canada is willing to pay for healthcare, but I'm upset because I want people to pay for healthcare, to help me out, kind of thing. Because it is a really good idea, but okay, maybe it's not the time or place. So you end up pivoting a bit, and went to the point of, finally, months after COVID had started, it was August, and I was completely burnt out, an absolute crisp shell of a human, who probably shouldn't have been nursing, but felt like I didn't have the option not to show up. Like, I just felt like you needed to. And it got to the point of, okay, well, what happens if I were to die, or I got really sick and was intubated and couldn't tell my family my wishes? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to start writing my stories down. And that's how the book got started. It was just stories from my kids. Heaven help me if I were to not, live through COVID. And it started with the good stories, the few times that I helped patients, and felt like that's exactly where I needed to be. I was where I was, and that was it. And it quickly turned into the really traumatic stuff that I had absolutely not processed, but had no reserves left to like shove it down. And so it all burbled up, and all these stories came out. And I looked at them all and said, okay, what's the point of this? There's got to be a point to this. And I was listening to Llewellyn, who's a metaphysical publisher in the States. They were having an online kind of book fair. And the only one that I was able to catch was this woman who had written a book, Intuition at Work. And I remember listening to it going, intuition at work. I use my intuition all the time at work. And it was just this light bulb click of a moment. And I'm like, oh my God, that's it. So I went through all my stories, and sure enough, every single one had some sort of level of intuition, whether I trusted my gut or didn't, or I was believed or I wasn't, or if I said anything at all, or or if I didn't. And I'm like, okay, so that's where that is. That's the theme. But being a nurse, I'm supposed to be having lots of science behind me, peer-reviewed articles. The amount of misinformation and disinformation was really starting to peak in August of 2020. So I thought, there's no way I can safely put this out and not be risking my license without lots of studies and science behind it. And to my shock, not only is there so much information on intuition, but there's so much information on intuition specifically in nursing. And so I'm like, okay, that's it. That's the book. And wrote it, finished it, was originally supposed to be traditionally published, which is a huge deal. Apparently, less people are accepted to traditional publishers in a year than Harvard. So I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. Waited 2 years. We finally moved into editing. And then a few months into editing, they're like, you know what? We're just going to go back to physiotherapy books. Here's your rights back, and here's the book, and good luck. I'm going, you're joking. Like, I've waited all this time. I've told people I was going to be traditionally published, and it's on me now. And so the thought process became, okay, do you apply to everybody again? Do you wait to get rejects after months and months? Do you wait another 2 years to be published and potentially have it fall through again? Or do you just self-publish? And so I'm like, well, if I've tried it the original way that I thought it was supposed to be done the first time, I'm just going to go for it this time. So ended up finding my own editor and cover design and typesetter and all these, and publisher, or not publisher, but PR person, and just paid for it all. It's costly. I don't know if I will ever get my money back, but it was a labor of love, and something that I believe wholeheartedly in. So if nothing else, the book will outlive me.
Well, and these are the decisions that you have to make as an entrepreneur sometimes, is you have to call those shots. You have to be willing to own it, whether it succeeds or doesn't. You have to kind of like, you have to be like your own boss. And sometimes you have to take a shot on something, which is clearly what you did. And I know for me, doing everything that I'm doing, I've certainly learned a lot of it just, as I've gone. And there there's a lot of resources out there on how to learn how to be an entrepreneur, how to publish a book, how to do a lot of the things that you and I have been doing. But at the end of the day, your experience is personal to you. And at the end of the day, you have to just figure it out, which you you somehow successfully did.
Fumbling through it the whole way through. And once you get into the entrepreneurial space and the author space, you realize we're all doing the same thing. We're all just bumbling through, looking for support and looking for how to make an impact and to figure it out. And that's just, we're all just goofing off, or at least I am anyways.
It can feel that way sometimes. I mean,
Absolutely.
depending on what I'm working on or what I'm doing, and if it's like a new tool that I'm using, like I had a guest on recently, we talked about Chat GPT, and
Oh,
they, yeah,
love
they,
ChatGPT.
I've never really used it. They want to like actually kind of show me a few things, and that's kind of what being an entrepreneur can be about. Is like sometimes you have to kind of like, as you put it, mess around a little bit in order to find that new thing that's going to potentially make your life easier or more efficient or make you better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
ChatGPT is life altering in the span of entrepreneurship. And I mean, even just getting a website up and running and getting copy, and or even just ideas on branding. Oh my God. So I ran it through because I was thinking about rebranding, and I kind of put it in. I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, what are the steps to rebrand, and lay it out like I'm 10. So here's da 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 da, and you're like, okay, please expand on point number one. And it's like, oh, choose your brand colors. And you're like, okay, well, what does gold, white, and navy blue signify? And oh, this is a great choice for a nursing entrepreneur. And it just goes. It is the craziest thing, and it's a lot of fun to, especially when you have no idea about the topics that you're putting into it. Man, it is so much fun. I know friends who actually use it as like a therapist.
wow. Well, I'll tell you what, between new technology and deferring to that a little bit, like AI, Chat GPT, and then just regular old delegation, those are two things that I'm really working on my end to kind of like get better at, because you can do a lot. And I know for me, I went to school for like television production. So when it comes to making a podcast, I like to at least think that I have a pretty decent amount of expertise on a couple of different areas. But I'm also not the best either. And there are other things like SEO and some other areas that like I'm not as strong with. And I personally like to think, because I've immersed myself in technology my whole life, I'm like, well, I can figure it out. I'm pretty good. I'm good enough. But there's also a point and a side to this where you do become a little bit humbled, and you realize you listen to your intuition, and you realize that something, maybe I need to figure out how to delegate a little bit more. And I just listening to your story, I feel like you may or may not have learned the powers of delegation through your story with getting your book published. I don't know if that's something like, were you comfortable delegating that going into it? I'll leave that as blank air for you to fill.
It was one of those things where I know I can write, but I'm a horrible editor. I know what I think would look good on a cover, but I definitely, when it comes to cover design in books, like every genre has a very specific take to it. And you want to say don't judge a book by its cover, but the game is to make your cover yours, but yet instantly recognizable when you pick it up that, oh, this is nonfiction. Oh, this is nursing. Oh, this is, something like that. So to delegate, I think it was easy to delegate because then I'm like, oh, whew, it's off of me. I don't need to worry about it. I can send it off to my editor and I can lean back and just go, I 100% agree with your edits. I don't need to guess really because I'm not an editor. And so my editor ended up taking out 10,000 words because apparently I like to try and say the same thing multiple different ways, which is really just a nursing thing when you're trying to teach patients about different concepts. You try and come at it from a few different angles to give them the opportunity to go, oh, that's what that is. And oh, that's what that means. I did not realize that I was doing it while I was writing also. But I mean, again, you realize what your time is worth. So for me, I work in hospital. I do a little bit of agency nursing. So I know what my dollar value per hour is worth. And so when it comes to editing, that's going to take hours and hours and hours, I look at what they're quoting me and I'm going, well, that's probably way cheaper than me trying to do it. Then I won't have to worry about it. Then it's done and I know it's done well. So you know what? It's a fairly large chunk of money, but I'm willing to pay that because I know that it's going to take it off my plate and then I can stop worrying about it. You're looking at other people and going like, oh, could I do cover design? Sure. And I gave it a shot. My cover was way off where we ended up. So I don't begrudge her at all. She did a fantastic job on my cover. And you figure out very quickly places like upwork.com where you can hire freelancers and then you can also work as a freelancer. It's a great place to kind of figure things out, but you need to walk into it with knowing that you're going to get what you pay for. So if you pay somebody on the lowest end, you more than likely are not going to get great work. It's just a matter of balancing it out and then not getting taken for a ride.
I think you said something in there that always sticks out to me whenever I'm thinking about, okay, when the time comes that I want to take this beyond just being the voice of my show and I want to like help people or really expand out more, finding out what your worth really is can, at least for me, is a little bit of a murky area. And I know for me, as somebody who would be starting out, I don't know, I've thought a lot about trying to help people start up like their podcasts. There's a lot of people who I think want to do what I'm doing, but they just don't know how. So
Yeah.
I have like one or two numbers in my head that I'm like, well, that's something that I could like maybe charge per session or whatever. But
Yeah.
even with that being said, it's like not 100% sure. And it's like, I know that I do research on it. I mean, it's a tough thing to figure out, I think.
Consulting is a huge deal. Consulting is a great way to do a lot of different things, especially if you're getting to be an expert in your field. So me being able to write a book and then help others write books happily, talking about the differences between self-publishing, hybrid publishing, traditional publishing, and what to expect. I've muddled through it. And so now I've come up out on the other end going like, oh, okay, now I've got a little bit of knowledge about what that whole process entails, how I would do it again. Would I change anything? Would I, being aware of things? I mean, the amount of scams in advertising and publishing If you're trying to publish a book and somebody is actively chasing you to get your manuscript, chances are that's going to be a scam. If you hear back from a publisher and they want to publish you and they want all these things, but they want money from you first, probably a scam. Hybrid publishing is hard because you are going to pay some money to have them help you publish the book. They're going to do certain portions for you, but how do you figure out what that line is and if that hybrid publisher is really all it's cracked up to be? If nothing else, you can always just Google, is so-and-so a scam? Is so-and-so publishing a scam? Is this, house a scam? Whatever. And just go down the Reddit rabbit hole and read people's experiences before you sign anything or send over $1. Because unfortunately, everybody wants to write a book. And those of us who have, you're so proud and you're kind of blind to other people wanting to support you. And so you want to feel the best in everybody. And, everybody just wants me to do so well. Look, I've got 3 offers to publish. Those are all scams. And I'm really sorry to burst your bubble, but I would rather you have your bubble burst than spend thousands of dollars on a scam.
No, I am 100% with you. And I can't help but to think about all those people who send messages out saying, hey, you're pretty cool. I'll Cash App you, blah, blah, blah. I don't even have Cash App for one thing.
Neither do I. As a Canadian, we don't even have it. We don't have Venmo. We've got nothing.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. But yeah,
we've got e-transferring. That's about it. If you've got somebody's email address, you can send them an e-transfer. And typically that's how we do it. But it's from one bank to another bank, typically.
Yeah. Now, there's some people that are like, yo, man, I'll Cash App you like, $10,000. Like, no, I don't. Why?
Don't do it.
Don't do any of that.
If it seems too good to be true, it more than likely is.
And
do some research.
And something like I'm saying is like beyond too good to be true. Don't fall for that. But
you work too hard for your money.
Yeah, no, we all do. So with that being said, I want to steer this back a little bit. Not that topic's not important, but I want to get back a little bit to just the evolution of your business, because you said you kind of like, obviously COVID 2020, that whole time period was really rough.
Everybody just right over it.
And that whole thing.
If we could never mention 2020 ever again, I feel like the whole world would be way better off.
It probably would. I'll promise not to really dwell on it too much. Just, especially for you, I can't even imagine what all that was like. But I know that you mentioned, all these things that I think are really important, and not even about COVID, just about your experience overall. Like, that has to be, it's a very demanding profession that you got into there with being an ER nurse. I see not only the good things like intuition and gut feeling and resilience, and you learned like a lot of really good things along the way, but just heartbreak, drama, bullying, the life to death moments, all that stuff. Was there a point where you were just like, well, I really want to help people, but I also want to kind of, remove myself from at least some of that immediate burden?
Yeah. Looking at it, so for the last 2 years and a little bit, I've actually dropped down to part-time from full-time.
Wow.
I figured out that so 6 shifts in a pay, so 6 12-hour shifts in 2 weeks is full-time hours. That's how they define full-time. If I'm working agency, depending on which agency and which hospital I'm going to, I work 2 shifts, and that's the equivalent of the 2 weeks pay. So instead of killing myself for the full 6 shifts. I can work 2 and be just as well off. So for right now, I figured out that, okay, I'm going to drop down to part-time. I still love my job, especially where I am. The people are fantastic. It's a really, really good atmosphere. It's the perfect mix of acuity and downtime. It's beautiful. I love it. But I can't do it full time anymore. So while I do my 2 night shifts and then I've got a week off, and then I do 2 night shifts, a week off, in that week off, if an agency shift pops up, I can take that agency shift. It can supplement my income, and then I can also have some money for my business. So it's been, figuring out, if you kind of capitalize, especially in nursing, if you capitalize on being available at a moment's notice and being flexible as to showing up to a unit that you may not have been on before with little to no training, and be able to pretty well just go, you can make a killing. And so that's the last 2 years have done that. And I've made more in the last 2 years than I have probably ever as a full-time nurse. And it's allowed me to have my business and travel. I've gone, in the last 9 months, I've gone to Orlando, Vegas, Boston, Toronto, Miami. We left out of Miami to go on a cruise to the Bahamas. And that's in 9 months. And, some of those were to promote the book, and I was either a vendor at an event, or I just got to go to the event and kind of self-promote. And I'm choosing that as a way to promote myself and my book, and be able to then have bulk book sales, which is a really great idea. You can very quickly, not quickly, but if you can make one sale, theoretically, that could be half my year's wage in one sale if I'm able to sell to a hospital system. So thinking outside the box, getting really weird with the ways that you make money, can come in clutch, honestly.
That's amazing. I mean, that's really, you're tapping into a little bit of kind of ballpark what I'm hoping to do with my own life, because I really want to grow. And I know you're also a speaker in addition to being an author. And I know at this point, I only know that you speak in one place. I don't know if you necessarily, do you speak and promote? Is that kind of what you do?
Getting there. So, have spoken at at a local university here to first-year nursing students. Ended up getting fantastic ideas for a set of journals that I've done, which great. Like, that's a whole other revenue stream. And then I'm actually speaking with Nurse Blake at NurseCon it's on the border of New York and Pennsylvania in August. And Nurse Blake in the nursing community is a massive influencer. He's got 4.5 million followers, kind of thing. And it's just someone who has decided that, nurses need to stick together, and let's come together. Let's do a conference, but let's do it different, and let's do it fun and connect. Because, like, who better to understand what you go through than another nurse? So it's been so much fun to try and get to that point, and getting there so quickly is shocking. But I will take it. But as soon as you start saying yes to some possibilities, some magical stuff happens. So it's been crazy, and I can't stop smiling to think about all the exceedingly cool things that I've done in a year.
It's like a lot of things. Like, once you're in, kind of like once you got into nursing and you were going to school, you graduate, like, you're in, that's it. And the same thing with like TV. I got into it, I got through school, and I got a couple of jobs in the field. I'm in, that's it. And I feel like the same applies to, like, hopefully most other things. I know most things I've experienced, like, if you really have the passion and you really get the ball rolling on something and people are taking notice of your skills and expertise and everything else. It's like, that's it. And what you're trying to do, and really what you are doing, is, I guess, I should say what I am trying to do, which is I'm trying to, get myself a little more out there to like be a speaker. And I feel like I'm picking up more and more momentum on some things in my life and really trying to like keep that going. And when you have that feeling of, I feel like I've made some progress, it's a very good feeling, is it not?
It's insane. As soon as things start going and you get a little momentum and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, you're like, okay, so maybe there is more to this than what I thought. And did the business have to be rebranded a couple of different times? Yeah. Am I going to go through another rebrand? Yeah, I am. But it's learning. It's learning, and it's not to say that you haven't learned things from the previous spots. If nothing else, you're learning resilience and perseverance and figuring out what actually is needed right now. Not to say that your first idea, your second and your third wasn't great ideas. It's just maybe not right now, not for you, not in this time zone right now. It can be very finicky, but once you find it and it clicks, watch out.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't know, not to play comparison games. I don't know if I've quite hit that euphoric level you seem to have hit, but I do know I've made some strides in 2025, and it feels good. It's like you want more of that, and it's very fulfilling and gratifying to know that something that you're building out of thin air basically is turning into a real tangible thing that people want more of, and they want to talk to you, they want to hear you out, and it's a great feeling.
Yeah, just be you.
Yeah.
No, like the generations now, if there's any BS, we can sniff it from a mile away. So just be you. Just be kooky and honest and goofy and play. Just goof off and say yes and see what happens, because sometimes it's just the coolest thing.
Well, let's see what happens when you are you, and you tell us how we can find you, how people can work with you, and anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, so you can find me at nursejenn, JENN.ca. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at ernurse.jenn, JENN. On LinkedIn is probably where I'm actually the most active. Instagram can take a back seat to LinkedIn. Jennifer Johnson, BSCNRN. It's just because there's so many Jennifer Johnsons that's the way, the best to find me. Yeah. And Amazon. All of my books, all my journals are all on Amazon. If you search up Jennifer A. Johnson RN, you'll find me there.
All right, fantastic. Well, there's like 1.5 million things that I could probably ask you about intuition, resilience, and checking your gut. And I know I have a story of resilience. My life has just been constant resilience, with me being born with rare syndrome, cleft lip and palate. And I know we don't have a whole ton of time, so I'm just kind of giving you a very short story. But I feel like I know a thing or two about being resilient and just picking yourself up after challenges and obstacles and just keeping on going. And I'd love your take on resilience and what people should keep in mind in that regard in their own life.
Yeah. Just keep going. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still moving forward. Taking one small step, it's just it doesn't matter how small the step, you're still moving forward. And expect that there's going to be disappointments and changes and roadblocks. But if you can reframe them as to like, okay, this is just a learning opportunity, you can be upset, absolutely be upset, but don't let it stop you from continuing to move forward.
And sometimes it's just that simple. I can sit here and talk everybody's ear off about resilience and my story and whatever, but sometimes it's just as easy as keep on going, just keep on going.
Just
So,
keep swimming.
yeah. Unfortunately, we're not going to keep on going with this episode because I know you have other things to do here, but it was a real pleasure to have you on Mark My Words today, Jenn. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
And again,
Anytime.
and I totally cut you off when you were saying something so nice.
Anytime. Just, you got it. You got it.
I appreciate it. And again, this was Jenn Johnson. She's the CEO of RX for Growth. She is magnificent. And I'm Marc Schmidt, the host of Mark My Words, the show you've been listening to. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Marc Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.